My name is Leo, and to be honest, I'm feeling a bit lost in life right now. Without diving too deep, my family situation is a mess, and for the past 3 years I've been trying to stay as far away from home as possible. My close friends from high school are changing in ways that do not resonate with me at all, and my hometown feels devoid of any opportunity. As I approach my senior year in college, I find myself grappling with uncertainty about what the future holds. Last year I found myself in Berlin, searching for something, maybe a sense of belonging or direction. I wandered into a bar called Roya, enjoying the solitude when it was time to leave. That's when I realized my apartment keys were missing. Just my luck. I stumbled out of the bar, knowing my parent was locked tight and it was far too late to get a replacement set. Instead of panicking, I decided to find a place to sleep for the night. As if my luck couldn't get worse, it began to rain. With nowhere else to go, I ducked under a nearby bridge, feeling slightly safer from the elements. As I started to drift off, I heard faint voices echoing across the river. Curiosity pulled me awake, and I squinted into the darkness, spotting 5 men on the opposite shore, gathered around a small boat that was tied up. They didn't seem to notice me at first, but soon enough, I realized I was witnessing something sinister. A drug dealer unfolding right before my eyes. My German isn't really great, but it didn't take much to piece together what was happening. Briefcases and duffel bags were exchanging hands, and my heart raced as I considered my options. I thought about moving to a safer spot, but didn't want to draw attention to myself. I decided to wait it out, hoping the situation would resolve itself. Suddenly, one of the men yelled something angrily in German and pulled a gun on one of the others. A thick tension hung in the air as the threatened man raised his hands, speaking rapidly in what looked like a desperate attempt to save himself. What happened next was absolutely horrifying. The other men started stripping the man of his clothing and confiscating his belongings. I immediately started panicking as I couldn't stay there any longer. I slowly got to my feet, but just as I began to move, one of the men shouted, roughly translating to "There is someone there." My heart raced as adrenaline kicked in. I didn't even look back. I bolted in the opposite direction, running for my life as their voices echoed behind me, shouting things I couldn't fully comprehend. The only words that were registered were "do not shoot." I ran until my legs felt like lead, and I was on the brink of throwing up from exhaustion and panic. The fear of those men catching me drove me forward, a primal instinct to survive overriding all else. It felt like a twisted game of fate, and I was finally slowed down. Breathless and terrified, I couldn't shake the thought that I could have easily lost my life that night. Sometimes I still think about it and wonder if I'm destined to run forever, always looking over my shoulder, haunted by the shadows of that night. It was just another ordinary Friday afternoon at my high school, and I was trudging down the hallway with my friend Emma, who was chatting about something I wasn't really paying attention to. My mind was preoccupied with the chaos of my life. Between the struggles at my home with my foster parents and the pressures of school, I was feeling overwhelmed. As we passed the bustling lunchroom, an urgent need hit me, and I asked Emma if she needed to use the bathroom. She said no and promised to wait for me outside. I stepped into the bathroom, immediately struck by an eerie silence. It was odd, because this bathroom was usually packed with students. Shaken off the feeling, I went into a stall. Just as I settled in, I heard the unmistakable sound of the entrance door swinging open and shutting hard. Someone had entered, but there was no further movement. My first thought was that it might be a student hiding from a teacher, so I shrugged it off. I finished up, stood up to bottom my jeans, and glanced at the graffiti covering the walls. Typical rants about teachers in some random coats. Then the door creaked open again, assuming the other person had finally left. I stepped out of the stall, only to find Emma waiting for me with a look of horror on her face. "What's wrong?" I asked, all concerned. Her voice shook as she asked me who was standing right behind me in the stall. A chill ran down my spine immediately as soon as she said that. I assured her that no one had been in there with me, but she was adamant. Emma explained that she had entered just moments before I came out, realizing she needed to go, but froze when she saw someone standing behind me in the stall, their shoes touching the back of mine. I felt my stomach drop. I had distinctly heard someone enter the bathroom. but I never heard them use the toilet. I was certain I was alone. Emma's face was pale as she insisted that no one had gone near the door until she walked in. And that's when I really began to feel uneasy. I didn't believe in the supernatural or any of that, but the weight of the situation sunk in. I found an administrator and shared what happened, hoping for some reassurance. Instead, she brushed it off, suggesting that Emma was just messing with me, but I knew my friend well, and Emma was not the type to joke about something like this. She looked me straight in the eyes, deadly serious, recounting exactly what she saw, and that was when dread settled over me like a heavy blanket. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been lurking in the bathroom stall with me, especially since I had clearly heard the door open and close twice. Even now, years later, at 18 years old, that unsettling experience haunts me, and I can't forget that chilling moment in the school bathroom when the line between reality and the supernatural blurred in the most terrifying way. This all began years ago when I was 20 and just started my first big girl job in a small town. I rented a cozy little one-story house with 2 bedrooms and just enough space for myself, along with the occasional gathering with my friends. At first, everything seemed perfect. My landlord, whom I'll call Michelle, was friendly and easygoing, and I thought I had found a great place to settle down. But a few weeks into my stay, things took a dark turn. One night, while I was unwinding after work, I heard a knock at my door. I was confused for a bit. I called out, "Who is it?" But there was only silence in response. I hesitated, deciding it was best not to open the door. After all, who would be knocking late at night? The next morning, I stepped outside to find a large note tapped to my storm door. It read, "Hello, beautiful." My stomach immediately churned. I instantly remembered the knocks from the previous night and felt a wave of unease wash over me. Who would do such a thing, I crumpled the note, disgusted, and tossed it in the trash, hoping this was just a one-time occurrence. But that night, as I cooked dinner, the knock returned, this time even more insistent. My heart was racing. I approached the door silently, straining to listen. There was no peephole, no way to see who stood outside without opening it, which I refused to do. The second night in a row of this unsettling pattern made it clear I was dealing with a stalker. I called my parents, all desperate for any advice. My dad, a retired police officer, didn't offer much reassurance. He said the police wouldn't help unless they caught the person in the act, and suggested I stay inside at night and avoid opening the door. If things escalated, he would come and stay with me. I took his advice to heart. The next morning, dread washed over me as I checked for another note. To my horror, there it was, another piece of paper stuck to the glass. "I like to watch you," it read. I took a picture and sent it to my family and Michelle, asking if she had any issues with stalkers. She seemed genuinely shocked and insisted she had no problems of that nature, which left me feeling more uneasy. In a burst of frustration, I left a note of my own on the door. "If you're looking for Michelle, she does not live here. If you continue to come here, I will report you to the police." I felt a flicker of confidence, believing it might end the madness. That night, I lay in bed, anxious but hopeful that my message had worked. But when I opened the door the next morning, my heart plummeted. The note wasn't mine. It was a new one. "I'm not looking for Michelle. I'm looking for you," it said. Followed by my name, I felt sick. My dad rushed over, packing a bag and driving up immediately. By the time I got home from work, he was already there, ready to protect me. The day had been a nightmare. I couldn't focus on anything but the fear gnawing at me. My mind raced with possibilities. Could it be someone from work? I felt paranoid, especially with a creepy coworker, Fernando, on my radar. As night fell, my dad and I decided to call the police. We wanted to let whoever was lurking know that we weren't alone. An officer arrived, and my dad, with his background, made sure to assert the seriousness of the situation. After taking a report, he stood there watching on the front stoop, determined to keep me safe while I tried to sleep. Luckily, the stalker didn't return that night, and soon after, I moved out. Michelle was so much understandable of the situation, and thankfully, whoever had been watching me didn't follow me to my new place. I was relieved, but still haunted by the mystery of who had been lurking outside my house. Though I would never know their identity, the fear lingered, a chilling reminder of how quickly safety can unravel.